Ciao amici italiani.
Welcome back, buckos. This is the casual guide to the Giro d'Italia General Classification 2021. We're going to go through each of the main GC contenders, look at their teams, what they've done so far in 2021, any question marks hanging over them. If you want a stage-by-stage preview of the Giro d'Italia, we've done one at length on the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. And the way we're going to look at it is exactly the way the market has broken it down. There are two groups for the Giro d'Italia GC. There are the three head contenders, Yates, Bernal, Evenepoel. Simon Yates, as of this morning, is the narrow favourite for the Giro d'Italia GC, just ahead of Egan Bernal at $4.70, and Evenepoel's been backed in now into $5.70. Now, some of you may say that is ridiculous overhyping for a man who's coming back from a broken pelvis, his first race day since that crash in Lombardia this Saturday. Some of you may say it's not enough respect for the GOAT, and especially now that he's backed by one of the most dominant pizza franchises in the game. The other five contenders, Vlasov, Carthy, Buchmann, Landa, and Evenepoel's teammate Almeida. For the first rider we're going to talk about, Egan Bernal. The team was only released a bit late by Ineos yesterday, and the notable difference in their team is they have taken out Ivan Sosa, which is a bit surprising. One would think we've got steep, long climbs here. Mountaintop finishes 9Ks, 9%. He's not there. So I would say the mountain support for Bernal is actually a little bit light. However, on the medium mountain stages and just generally throughout the Giro, I think it's a really, really strong team. Engines in Castroviejo and Ganna. Moscon, I think, is their trump card, frankly. He has looked in fantastic form this year. Strade third, that's the big result. All the other GC contenders at this Giro should be concerned about that result because we have a Montalcino gravel stage in this year's Giro. It's got 35 Ks of gravel and steep climbs, 3 Ks, 9%. in stage 11. So that's why I think that Montalcino stage will be one that Bernal is targeting to gain significant time. So as just a general racer, I think Bernal is one of the best of this year's Giro. That's why he was the favourite up until this morning. But the big question mark for Bernal, and the one I can't answer, and maybe even he and his team don't know about, is how his back will hold up. He pulled out of the Dauphiné last year before the Tour, I think after stage 3 or 4 with a bad pack. He was then looking perfectly fine at the Tour, right up there on GC, up there on the climbs, until stage 15, his back just completely went kaput. He's come back this year and he's still saying he occasionally has back pain. That's why he's not the clear-cut favourite, and we just won't know until we get into week 3 of this Giro how his back is going to hold up. The favourite for the Giro GC as at Thursday 6 May is actually Simon Yates, and that is solely off the back of his Tour of the Alps performance, where he won GC in dominating fashion. It must be said, he won stage 2 easily. Looked dominant there, could have won stage 3, but he took the descent really easily. But my question is winning GC by a minute over Pello Bilbao in the Tour of the Alps enough to be the favourite for the Giro d'Italia when in other stage races this year, Tirreno Adriatico, Prati di Tivo, second chasing Pogacar, was looking really good, the best on that day on that climb apart from Tadej Pogacar, but then completely anonymous for the rest of that Tirreno Adriatico. Catalunya straight afterwards, so you think, oh, maybe he's building form, but it was actually his brother Adam Yates who was dominant at Catalunya back in the middle of March. And there was 2 mountain stages back to back, but Yates was barely hanging on both of those stages. 12th on the Volta stage, which was won by Adam Yates, and then Portonais stage won by Chavez. He got dropped out of Group 2. He wasn't even hanging on in the group. Lucas Hamilton was doing better than him. 2018, he was in the Maglia Rosa for ages. He won multiple stages. He was looking in fantastic condition. And then the Froome Finestra stage happened on stage 19, I think it was. And he lost 38 minutes. 2019 was looking good. And first individual time trial, I think he beat Tom Dumoulin in that TT. Then the San Marino TT, he lost over 3 minutes to Roglic. That was his GC done. GC last year got COVID. That was that end of his Giro. But the big question mark for Simon Yates is which version of him are you going to get? Are you going to get the Prati di Tivo Tour of the Alps one in the 3rd week? In which case, he could be dropping everyone easily on the climbs, just sending away for a stage win, taking the Maglia Rosa. Or are you going to get the Catalunya one where he's dropping from Group 2, just barely hanging on to Group 3, losing time on not the hardest mountaintop finish stages that you'll see in the World Tour this year. The third main contender, and I've had so many questions asking me, what do you think Evenepoel will do? How do you think he's going to go at the Giro? I don't think they would have sent him to the Giro, and he wouldn't be lining up if he was in sort of Froome condition, just making it back. There's other races they could have sent him to, like Ineos taking Sosa out of the Giro, sending him to the Algarve. If he was at the Algarve, I think, okay, he's working his way back in. I think the time trial, he should do absolutely fine. I have a little back back to lay strategy there with Evenepoel. But he's never done a Grand Tour before. And no one knows how he's going to go in this brutal third week, which I'll get to in a second. On an easy stage with a mountaintop finish, even the stage to Zoncolan, which isn't the hardest stage beforehand, and then they hit Zoncolan afterwards, I think he should be fine on those sort of stages. As well as stage 6, the San Giacomo stage, like a 3-star stage with a mountaintop finish, think he should be fine as well. More than fine, actually. I mean, you look at the Vuelta a Burgos, you want to have an indication of what his climbing was like before the injury. Vuelta a Burgos 2020, Picon Blanco put like 30 seconds into Mikel Landa on that steep and hard finish. But the two big question marks are, how will he be after his injury? Because he hasn't done any race days, which I don't know, and you don't know. Presumably Quickstep do know. The second question no one really knows is, how is he going to go in this third week? Which I'll just bring out a couple of things from it quickly, not the full route analysis like in the podcast. And I know I've said third week, but I'm going to kind of include the Cortina d'Ampezzo stage in that there is a rest day between stage 16 and 17. But Cortina d'Ampezzo stage, this is nasty. 5,700 meters climbing. It's got 5-star rating. If you crack early on the Cortina d'Ampezzo stage, you could be losing minutes, not just 20 to 40 seconds. On stage 17 after the rest day, they've got an 11.5k, 9% mountaintop finish with a proper mountain in the middle of the stage. Then they've got an easy transition day. Then stages 19 and 20, they're a nasty pairing. And this is why you could lose probably on the San Giacomo climb. You know, I don't expect someone like Almeida to lose time, but say he even loses 10, 15 seconds. Or say someone has a bad day that you'd expect from like Carthy, he loses 25 seconds. It's possible. That can be made up on this pairing of stages 19 and 20. You have to be on in these stages, otherwise you could be losing minutes. But let's take a look at the second group of GC contenders, and starting with Emanuel Buchmann, who myself probably underrated him a little bit in the podcast preview. He had a crash at the 2020 Dauphiné. It cooked his season. I think he was out of the Tour de France after that. He's a pure climber. His TT is okay. It can be quite good. But this year, I mean, 13th and 12th at Basque Country and UAE Tour, he hasn't looked like dominant, but he's never looked completely dominant. He was just solid on her feet. I think he lost like 45, 55 seconds to Pogacar. I think his team low-key is solid with Fabro, Grossschartner. Aliotti might overperform the young guy and Benedetti to help in the mountains. I know they got their split Ciclamino aspirations with Sagan, but he's got Oss and Bodnar. The reason he's so long is because he's not very punchy. His best result is the 4th Tour in 2019. We haven't seen that level for a couple of years at this point. And his upside isn't as high as Bernal, Yates, or Evenepoel. The next rider, son of Chris Froome, Hugh Carthy. Speaking of Chris Froome, mountain raids is what I think Carthy could be capable of at this Giro. He's one of his big stage wins with the Tour de Suisse 2019, Gom stage. He's good on the steep stuff. He won the Angleroo mountaintop finish in the Vuelta last year. His TT there was okay, but this year's TT's been kind of bad actually, but TT is just not as important in this year's Giro. 39k is a flat ITT. He hasn't looked as solid on the climbs. Catalunya, as I already mentioned, getting dropped on the Portonais stage and just hanging on stage 3 with the Thomas group. But again, day in, day out, if the three contenders are on form, Carthy is not going to be out climbing them. One would think maybe Zoncolan stage I like him for, and a mountain raid later in the week on an early climb as well if the race is broken apart. But we really haven't seen that from him this year. The rider I think is being slept on the most is Mikel Landa. He's the most consistent GC rider on this start list. He has no worse than 7th in his last 5 Grand Tours, and he's always going to, he lost time in the crosswinds in the Tour last year, so did Pogacar, but Pogacar can make it up in the TT, which Landa couldn't. But on the climbs, he was fine. He would lose a bit of time maybe on Puy-Marie, a punchy finish to the Slovenians. But apart from the Slovenians, Landa was right up there. He finished alongside Port as the next best. But he's got a similar team here. Bilbao, Caruso, Gino Maida I think could be pretty good. Mohoric, Tratnik. They could be very useful as satellite riders or pacing to set up a move in that third week on those mountain passes in the middle of stages. Almeida, the other quick-step man who allegedly Evenepoel is supposed to be at the Giro riding for Joao Almeida, the Portuguese Bradley Wiggins. I think it's a complete travesty he's not going to the Tour de France, honestly. I think he's been put in a difficult spot at this Giro d'Italia where I don't think the parcours suits him too much. I already showed you like the Alpe Motta stage rather, but even the Alpe d'Huez stage on stage 19 is nasty. Cortina d'Ampezzo. I mean, maybe on some of the medium mountain stages in the first 2 weeks he can be good and gain time if other riders have difficulties. I call him the Portuguese Bradley Wiggins because he's going to be trying to gain as much time in the time trials and then limiting time on the climbs as possible, but I mean, there's just not that many TTKs here. So if Evenepoel isn't on, I have a really tough time seeing how Almeida really contests for the win in this race. Top 5, certainly. He's already a seasoned pro at like 22 years old at limiting his losses. He's so good at that, but there's a lot of stages where he's going to have to be doing that. The 5th guy in that group, Vlasov, young Russian, second on GC at Paris-Nice, where he was consistent and improved time trial at Paris-Nice compared to last year. Tour of the Alps 3rd. He was sick at the start of the Vuelta and sick during the Giro last year. He came on really strong at the Vuelta last year and he was attacking late in those stages, but he was so far behind on GC, maybe that gave him a little bit extra leash. The thing I'm most concerned about for him was, his team is not very strong. I mean, Luis Leon Sanchez, love him, but how is he going to help on some of those really difficult stages? He's going to need Tejada to really step up. They attacked with him at Tour de Provence, but Tejada and Gorka Izagirre are his main helpers. And then also his descending, kind of like Sivakov as well. It's a little bit iffy. But now the long shots deep in the betting. Jai Hindley second at the Giro last year, wearing the Maglia Rosa and the TT. He's definitely a long shot for GC, but would not be surprised if he took home a stage win either, particularly if he's far behind on GC. His teammate, Romain Bardet, just moved to DSM. Even longer odds. He looked good at the Tour last year until he crashed and hit his head. But if he was actually got back to his previous level, he'd be a massive shout for the podium, Romain Bardet, but he just isn't looking like he's there. Dan Martin was solid at the Vuelta, just missed out on the podium last year. He's always there. I see him more of a punchy guy. I don't even know if he's going for stages or GC. I presume he's going for GC, but he's long on the odds. Sivakov, general rule in Grand Tours, betting on the second Ineos GC contender is generally a pretty good play, Tao Geoghegan Hart. But again, I don't really see it with Sivakov. He crashes a lot. I don't think his descending's too good, and Yates was dropping him whenever he wanted to last month in the Tour of the Alps. Pale Bilbao I like for a top 10 as well, consistent last year in the Tour de France, helping Landa, and then good at the Giro as well. One of the best descenders in the world. You can attack on descents, and I'm not sure many people can follow him apart from Bernal and Yates. But that's a casual, maybe you think not so casual, overview of the GC contenders at the Giro. In terms of the stages, the key ones to watch from a GC perspective, I think stage 11, the Montalcino gravel stage, could be an outstanding one, particularly if there's bad weather. Zoncolan, must watch, of course, stage 14. Stage 16 before the second rest day to Cortina d'Ampezzo. Got to watch that one, as well as stages 19 and 20, big time. And the Giro could be won or lost on those stages. But if you want to catch my recaps of every single Giro stage, that'll be on the podcast channel and on podcast players. But otherwise, I'm a bit too G'd up for Saturday. I hope you're excited for the Giro as well, and I'll see you then. Ciao.